If someone had told Logan Wilson that a broken-down diner would save his life, he would have driven right past it. Back then, he and his son Mason lived in an old pickup that smelled of rust and fading memories. Every morning, they'd drive until the one needle hovered near empty, then stop wherever the road ended. That particular morning, it ended at a place neither had seen before. A forgotten roadside diner sat at the edge of nowhere in small-town Wisconsin. Windows shattered, the sign hanging precariously by one chain, letters still reading Sonny's. Nothing about this place looked sunny anymore. The parking lot sprouted weeds through cracked concrete. The roof sagged dangerously, and paint peeled in long strips like sunburned skin. Logan stared at the building, something about it making him pause despite its sorry state. The front door swung gently in the autumn breeze, half open as if waiting for someone to return. "Dad," Mason whispered beside him, his 12-year-old voice carrying in the morning stillness. "Do you think anyone still lives here?" Logan shook his head. Not for a very long time. Inside, dust covered everything like winter frost. Booth seats lay ripped open, stools stood rusted in place, and faded menus still waited on the counter, showcasing pancakes and coffee from another lifetime. Yet beneath the ruin, a strange warmth lingered, as if the air remembered laughter and sizzling bacon grease from better days. They'd found more than walls, they'd found history. Walking slowly through the abandoned space, their footsteps echoed across cracked tile floors. The back door led to a kitchen with a broken stove, dented refrigerator, and bare shelves save for one lonely coffee mug. Mason ran his fingers across the dusty counter. "Think anything still works?" "Only one way to find out," Logan replied, half joking as he twisted a faucet knob. To their surprise, a weak stream of brownish water sputtered out. Their eyes met in silent wonder. It wasn't much, but it was something. That's how hope starts, sometimes not with fanfare, but with a rusty trickle in a place the world forgot. They settled in one of the booths that night, patching a broken window with cardboard and using their one thin blanket for warmth. Outside, the neon sign flickered weakly, a single letter lighting momentarily before fading back to darkness. "Look," Mason pointed, excitement in his voice. "It still works." "Barely," Logan murmured. "But it's trying." Mason's words struck something deep inside Logan. They were trying to just two souls the world had left behind, still flickering when everyone thought they'd gone dark. For the first time since David's accident 2 years ago, Logan felt something shift inside him. That night, for the first time in months, they didn't sleep in the truck. Morning sunlight poured through broken windows, transforming ordinary dust into floating gold. Mason was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the counter, sketching in his notebook with complete absorption. "What are you drawing?" Logan asked, stretching out stiffness from his back. "Our diner," Mason answered proudly, turning the book. "What it'll look like when we fix it up." Logan surveyed the collapsed ceiling, the mold creeping up walls, the broken booths, and nearly said it was impossible. But the words died in his throat because Mason looked at this ruin and saw potential. Perhaps that's what Logan needed to see the world through his son's eyes again. "Your dad would have loved this place," Logan said softly, allowing David's memory to enter their conversation for the first time in months. "He always wanted a little diner someday." Mason's eyes brightened. "I remember. He said he'd call it Second Chances." Logan swallowed hard against the sudden tightness in his throat. Medical bills after David's accident had drained their savings, cost them their Chicago apartment, their security, but maybe, just maybe, they'd found their second chance in this forgotten corner of Wisconsin. "All right, partner," Logan said finally. "Let's see what this old place can become." They started small, sweeping floors, gathering trash, patching holes in the roof with scrap metal found behind the diner. Every evening, they'd light a small fire outside, heat canned soup, and talk about how the place used to smell of coffee and buttered toast. "If we fix it up," Mason said one night, eyes reflecting flames, "maybe we can actually cook here, for real customers." Logan laughed. Spring sunshine filtered through newly patched windows as Logan sorted through ancient receipts behind the counter. 2 months had passed since they'd claimed Sonny's as their temporary home, and with each passing day, the diner felt less like a shelter and more like a possibility. The residents of Pine Creek, however, remained cautiously distant. Small towns held tightly to their secrets and suspicions, especially when newcomers arrived without explanation. Sarah Matthews from the local grocery had been the first to extend kindness. A widow in her 60s with silver hair and permanently flour-dusted hands. She appeared one morning with day-old bread and curious eyes. "Heard someone's trying to wake up old Sonny's," she said, placing the paper bag on the counter. "Thought you might need this." Logan accepted her offering with grateful hands. "We're just staying temporarily while we figure things out," he explained, not yet brave enough to voice the dream growing inside him. Sarah studied Mason, sketching by the window. "That boy has talent," she observed, then met Logan's eyes directly. "Folks here talk. They're saying a single man and a boy living in an abandoned building seems strange." Logan tensed, knowing what typically followed such conversations in small towns. The questions about his wife, or rather, the absence of one. "My husband David died 2 years ago," Logan said quietly, watching her face for the familiar shift. "Car accident, Mason is our son." Sarah's expression softened, not with disgust, but with genuine sympathy. "Loss is loss," she said simply, "and this town knows plenty of it." She became their first ally, bringing supplies and occasionally, more importantly, information about the diner's history. Through her, they learned Sonny's had been a local institution for nearly 40 years before closing its doors in the early 90s. One rainy afternoon while cleaning out the back office, Logan discovered a tin box tucked behind a loose baseboard. Inside lay dozens of handwritten notes, not business records, but love letters exchanged between Sonny and Joe. "Coffee's cold, but I'll warm it when you come home. Keep the grill hot for me. Sunshine, save me the last dance tonight." They were messages between partners who had built something together, who found magic in the mundane rhythm of everyday love. Logan ran his fingers over the faded ink, remembering similar notes he'd once tucked into David's lunch bag. The parallels weren't lost on him, another couple who had once poured their hearts into the same space. Days later, a pickup truck pulled into the gravel lot, and a man in his 50s approached with cautious steps. Logan tensed, preparing for confrontation. "You the ones fixing Sonny's?" the man asked, running weathered hands through salt and pepper hair. Logan nodded, stepping protectively in front of Mason. "I'm Steve Thompson," the man said. "My parents owned this place for nearly 4 decades. Steve walked the perimeter slowly, running his hand along countertops and booth edges, lost in memory. "Haven't been back here in 30 years, he murmured. "Never thought I'd see it again." His initial wariness gradually gave way to stories how his mother Sonny had been the face of the diner, while his father Joe handled the grill, how they danced in the kitchen after hours, how this place had put him through college. By dusk, Steve was helping Logan repair a stubborn pipe, both men working in comfortable silence. "Mom always said this place ran on more than food," Steve mentioned later. "She said it ran on belonging." New challenges appeared with spring thaw. Richard Green, a property developer with political connections and expensive suits, began appearing at the diner, clipboard in hand. He spoke of progress, opportunity, and a planned shopping complex that would revitalize the forgotten stretch of highway, conveniently requiring Sonny's to disappear. "You're squatting on prime real estate," Richard explained with practiced sympathy. "I'm offering fair market value for land that, frankly, isn't legally yours." The threat lingered in the air like approaching thunder. Logan had no claim to the property, no resources to fight a legal battle, and no standing in a community still deciding if he belonged. Yet small gestures of acceptance continued. Bill Anderson, a retired plumber, appeared one morning offering to check the water lines free of charge. Jack Peterson brought electrical supplies and helped restore power to the kitchen. Children began stopping by after school, curious about Mason's drawings pinned to the walls. Most unexpected was Tyler Morris, the hardware store owner who started appearing with excess inventory that always seemed precisely what Logan needed. Tall with kind eyes and a quiet laugh, Tyler approached their project with gentle enthusiasm, never pushing for details about Logan's past. "Town's divided about you two," Tyler admitted one evening as they repaired kitchen cabinets. "But people are noticing how that boy lights up talking about this place. How you're pouring yourself into something most would bulldoze." Logan remained guarded, deflecting personal questions with practiced ease. Opening his heart again seemed impossible. David's memory still occupied too much space. Yet he couldn't deny the growing warmth whenever Tyler appeared, offering coffee and conversation without expectation. The day they fixed the ancient stove felt like Christmas. Mason found a sealed tin of coffee in the back storage room. Years expired but intact. They brewed it anyway, the rich aroma filling the space as they sipped from mismatched mugs. "This is the best coffee I've ever had," Logan declared, meaning every word. Mason grinned. "That's because it's ours." And he was right. Everything they possessed, every chair, every plate, every patched tile belonged to them because they'd earned it through perseverance. The diner wasn't just shelter anymore. It was proof that beauty could emerge from brokenness, that forgotten places might still find purpose. With each repair, Logan realized they weren't just rebuilding a diner. They were rebuilding themselves, learning that sometimes life's most profound healing comes through the simple act of creating something new from what others had abandoned. The morning of Sunny's reopening dawned with golden light and nervous energy. Logan had spent hours the previous night preparing a simple menu: eggs, toast, and pancakes made from David's recipe that Mason had insisted on naming Mason's Lucky Pancakes. No printed menus yet, just handwritten specials on a chalkboard Sarah had donated. Logan stood behind the freshly scrubbed counter, heart pounding as he flipped the closed sign to open for the first time. "What if nobody comes?" Mason whispered, arranging silverware with meticulous care. Logan squeezed his son's shoulder. "Then we'll have pancakes for dinner." An hour passed in silence. Then 2. Logan was about to suggest they close early when the rumble of diesel engines broke the stillness. 3 trucks pulled into the lot, and burly men in work clothes stepped out, stretching after long hours on the highway. "You folks serving coffee?" the tallest driver asked, eyeing the place with cautious hope. Mason straightened up, professional beyond his years. "The best kind, cheap and hot." The men laughed, settling into booths with creaking springs. When Logan served their pancakes, the lead driver took a thoughtful bite, then looked around the space with newfound appreciation. "Didn't think this place would ever open again," he remarked. "Been driving past it for 20 years. "Neither did we," Logan admitted. The driver nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Keep it up. Feels good in here." That simple compliment warmed Logan more deeply than expected. Sometimes the kindness of strangers could repair something long broken inside. By noon, 5 more travelers had stopped. By evening, nearly a dozen people had crossed their threshold. The day's earnings were modest, barely $50, but Logan and Mason felt like millionaires. After closing, they shared the last pancake perched on the counter, legs swinging as twilight painted the diner in soft purple hues. "We really did it, Dad," Mason said, maple syrup clinging to his chin. Logan smiled, ruffling his son's hair. "We started it. That's different." But looking around at light reflecting off chrome fixtures, at notes truckers had already pinned to their bulletin board, it felt like more than a beginning. It felt like coming home. Their fragile peace shattered a week later when a stern-faced woman in a crisp blazer stepped through the door, clipboard in hand. "Health inspector," she announced, flashing credentials. "Receive reports of unauthorized food service at this location." Logan's stomach dropped as she methodically documented every violation: expired permits, unfinished renovations, inadequate refrigeration. The list grew longer with each step she took. "You need proper licensing before serving a single cup of coffee," she concluded. "Until then, you're shut down." The news traveled quickly through Pine Creek. whispers and speculation building with each retelling. That evening, Richard Green arrived with feigned sympathy and an increased offer for the property. "This is fortunate timing," he suggested smoothly. "Proper permits take months, thousands in fees. My offer lets you walk away with something to show for your effort." Logan nearly surrendered, seeing months of work crumbling around him. But when Mason came downstairs, eyes wide with unshed tears after overhearing the conversation, something hardened inside him. They'd already lost too much. Help arrived unexpectedly. First came Mayor Jenkins, a retired attorney who'd quietly observed their progress for weeks. She brought paperwork and practical advice about navigating local ordinances. The town clerk appeared with historical records confirming Sonny's grandfather status for certain building codes. Even the health inspector returned with specific guidelines rather than penalties. "Technically, I could shut you down," she admitted. "But this town needs a good diner. Fix what matters, and I'll work with you." Most surprising was the arrival of Steve Thompson with 3 friends carrying toolboxes and determination. Mom and Dad wouldn't want their place bulldozed for another soulless strip mall, Steve declared, rolling up his sleeves. "Let's make this legitimate." For 2 frantic weeks, they worked around the clock, upgrading plumbing, rewiring ancient electrical systems, installing donated kitchen equipment. Logan's savings dwindled to nothing, but each improvement brought them closer to compliance. The day their official business license arrived, Logan framed it carefully, hanging it beneath the vintage photograph of Sonny and Joe that Steve had provided. The reopening wasn't grand, just coffee, basic breakfast items, and Mason's increasingly famous pancakes. But something fundamental had shifted. They weren't just squatters anymore. They belonged. With legitimate status came inspiration. Logan introduced free meal Thursdays, remembering their own hungry days on the road. Tyler helped install a suggestion box where customers could request specialties, many becoming menu mainstays. The diner slowly transformed into a community space where locals and travelers alike found welcome. The night they finally reconnected, the ancient neon sign remained etched in Logan's memory. Mason had painted "Where Hope Never Closes" on a wooden plaque beneath the original Sonny's lettering. As electricity coursed through the tubes for the first time in decades, the red glow illuminated faces gathered in the parking lot: Sarah, Steve, Bill, Jack, even the mayor. Tyler stood slightly apart until Logan quietly moved beside him, their shoulders almost touching as they watched the sign flicker to life. Neither spoke, but something unspoken passed between them, a recognition that some broken things were worth repairing, that patience might eventually be rewarded. "Beautiful," Tyler whispered finally. Logan nodded, allowing their hands to brush momentarily. "It's not perfect." "No," Tyler agreed with a gentle smile, "but it's trying." As summer arrived, so did Richard's escalating pressure tactics, anonymous complaints to regulatory agencies, rumors about Logan's background, veiled threats about code violations. Yet each challenge only cemented community support. When Richard proposed rezoning at the town council meeting, he faced unexpected resistance from business owners and residents alike. "Sonny's isn't just a diner," Sarah testified firmly. "It's become part of who we are." Logan realized then that rebuilding the diner had accomplished something far more significant than creating a livelihood. It had taught an entire community that renewal was possible, that second chances weren't just personal journeys, but collective possibilities waiting to be embraced.